And as it's still the 1920s, Benito Mussolini's got to recognize that his country is not really on its feet economically yet. Country's not on its feet economically yet. His military is nowhere near where it would need to be a competitor to the great powers of Europe. And so he's got some distance to make up. And so despite our now knowing that he wants to be an expansionist power, that he wants to be a great power of Europe, that he wants to dominate North Africa at the expense of France, Benito Mussolini is going to play the internationalist. And we used that word last week. An internationalist is someone who's willing to work with other nations in order to solve problems before they might escalate into something greater. And I want to give you a couple examples of that. In 1924, there will be some meetings in Switzerland that become known as the Locarno Conference. And out of the Locarno Conference comes the Locarno Treaties. At Locarno, there were 5 nations. Italy was one of them. Britain, France, Belgium, and Italy. Britain, France, Belgium, Italy. Oh, and Germany. My bad. 5. Britain, France, Germany, Italy, and Belgium at Locarno in 1924. And out of these meetings comes a couple agreements, a couple important agreements. First, those 5 nations agree to a mutual defense pact. Essentially meaning if any nation in the treaty violates that pact, the other nations are compelled to step up and defend. France was particularly nervous about working out any agreement with Germany. But now this mutual defense component to the Locarno Treaty says, if Germany ever gets a little sketchy again, then Britain and Italy and Belgium will now side with France to push Germany back. And vice versa. Same, if Germany's got worries about French aggression, same would happen. But what also comes out of Locarno is an agreement that those borders that would be drawn at the end of World War I with the Treaty of Versailles and the Treaty of Saint-Germain and the Treaty of Trianon, with those new borders of Europe, all right, especially the Treaty of Versailles western borders, the borders between Germany and Belgium and Germany and the Netherlands and Germany and France, those western borders after World War I, the Locarno Treaty says they're accepted now. Remember, Germany signed the Treaty of Versailles under duress. They were forced to sign it, or the war would not come to an end. Well, now by 1924, Germany is saying, okay, we accept those western borders. We accept those western borders. Now, what does this have to do with Italy? Mussolini is a guy that's kind of calling a lot of the shots at Locarno. He's organizing the meeting. He's pushing the meeting along. And this is kind of what he has to do to have Italy seen as a player along with the other great nations of Europe. Now, we'll talk more later about what the Locarno Treaty says and what the Locarno Treaty doesn't say, but I want you just to note, it solidifies the western borders of Europe. It doesn't say anything about the eastern borders, meaning those could still be up for negotiation or adjustment down the line. And we will see that being the case with regard to Eastern Europe. So out of Locarno comes what is called in the press a spirit of Locarno, that nations are working together. And we can add this to our collection of 1920s attempts at keeping international peace, right? The League of Nations, the Locarno Treaties now, the Washington Conference that limited naval arms, and also what happened in 1928, which Italy is going to jump on board as well, that said war would not be used as an instrument to solve international disputes. I'm hearing it very vaguely. Say it out loud. Kellogg-Briand Pact. Very good. In addition to signing on to the Locarno Treaties, Italy will also be a signatory onto the Kellogg-Briand Pact. They're one of 60 nations that sign on to this idea that war will not be used to solve international disputes. Kind of interesting, being just a few years after Italy tried to solve their problem with Greece by invading Corfu, but Benito Mussolini maybe has turned a page. Or maybe he hasn't. Because all the while he's making these agreements, he's still got the plans in his mind for growing the Italian Empire. And even while he's making international agreements, he is violating other international agreements. For example, he has invited German pilots into Italy to train. The League of Nations is keeping a watchful eye on Germany. Germany who's been prohibited from developing an air force via the Treaty of Versailles. Well, they're secretly rebuilding an air force in Italy under Mussolini's eye. This is in violation of the Treaty of Versailles. So we can see where Mussolini really stands, even though he's making these international agreements. We'll talk about this in a couple days, but make a note. The rebuilding of the German military is going to begin before Adolf Hitler even comes to power. Hitler gets most of the credit or discredit for that, but it actually started before him. He's also dealing with uprisings in Libya, in the Italian, I can't even see it on this map. Italy controls Libya, right down here. Italy controls Libya in North Africa. And along with other nationalist movements, there's a Libyan nationalist movement that's pushing for independence from Italy. Mussolini will send in his army to violently suppress that uprising. And despite his own disarmament treaties that he has agreed to limit Italian arms, Benito Mussolini will be making promises to the Italian legislature that he will rebuild an Italian air force that will one day, quote, blot out the sun. So we've got a lot of aggressive rhetoric, at least, from Benito Mussolini. And by the time we get to the early 1930s, as the Great Depression will be causing a negative economic impacts in Italy, and we'll see Adolf Hitler on the rise in Germany, we will see Benito Mussolini take a more aggressive stance towards his foreign policy actions. All right?